So, I'm currently in the middle of making a much more dedicated video on Deadlock, talking about, why I like the game so much and what I think it does that's interesting that sort of deviates from the traditional MOBA formulas and whatnot. But a few people have commented on my previous videos about Concord that they'd be interested in seeing me compare and contrast the heroes of this game to, of course, the heroes of the now late Concord. And I thought that that would be kind of an interesting exercise to kind of just basically apply the same generally functional design rules that I established in that previous video, which there'll be a link in the description if you want to check that out, and see just how much better these characters are at adhering to those rules than Concords were. And so, just to give you a quick refresher, basically the two main functional design rules that I established were that when you look at a character, you should generally be able to tell what the character can do, so that when you fight them and you don't necessarily know what their abilities are, you at least get an idea as to what you should be looking out for. And then on top of that, you also obviously want the character to be memorable and distinct, because if you're fighting a bunch of enemies and they all just kind of blend into each other and it's kind of hard to tell them apart, well then it doesn't really matter anything else about them, because you're just going to lose track of who's who and you're just not going to be able to do anything about it. And of course, generally speaking, like beyond just the functional elements, there are like just generally aesthetic elements that like a character should just generally be appealing to look at. But then on top of that, another good trait to look out for that's on more of the aesthetic side, but can help, make a hero more appealing to the audience, is to try and convey like parts of their backstory and personality through their design, so that you can kind of get an idea as to like who they are as a person, so that when somebody looks at them they go, oh, that looks interesting, I want to see them and like learn more about them and things like that. And like, so that's kind of like the general sort of rules that I'm going with here, that I'm going to be looking at these characters and, like I said, comparing them to the absolute dumpster fire that is the Concord roster. So like, and also just to go into a little bit more detail about that first rule about the kinds of abilities that a character has. Some people were a little bit confused about the nuance of exactly what I was talking about there. So like, let's take a look at Abrams, for example. So obviously I've already played this game a lot, so I do know what most of these abilities are for most of these characters, but I'll try to analyze them like I'm looking at them at the first time. Although, I guess to be fair, we could play that game again where, if you want to, take a look at the character just on your own and leave a comment of like what you think this character's vibe is. Like, what is he all about? Just looking at, his general aesthetic and look and what kind of accessories he has. And then that way, when I reveal what he can do, you can kind of compare and contrast your notes. And we can do that for a number of characters. But like, just looking at Abrams here, it's pretty clear that this man is built like a brick shithouse. Like, even without knowing what any of the other characters look like, you can tell that this guy is larger than most people. He is huge, he's broad-chested, he's not wearing any armor, but he's also very clearly not human, so it almost comes off like he clearly doesn't need armor, you know what I mean? On top of that, he's wielding a revolver, but it's an incredibly fat revolver with a very short nose. So like, this guy is clearly not going to be a long range or even mid range character. This guy wants to be up in your face, punching your face constantly, and just generally giving you a bad time. And he's going to be a hard person to kill. So like, this guy very clearly a tank. There's no question about that. Now, that does convey very much what he can do. Now, he has abilities that may not necessarily be conveyed literally in his design. So, his two main active abilities that you need to watch out for is that he has a charge where he just kind of tackles you, and like, you can get that vibe. Like I said, he clearly wants to be up close and in your face. So, the fact that he has an ability that charges himself forward to get into melee range, yeah, though that makes sense. That checks out with his design. But then he's also got an AoE lifesteal. Now, to be fair, like I said, he doesn't really give off the vibes that he would somehow have an AoE lifesteal ability. But the AoE lifesteal, the way it works is that it drains life in a small radius around him and then gives him that life, obviously. So it reinforces this idea that he wants to be up close and in your face and is going to be hard to kill while he's there, because this is his sustainability. It gives him health regen as long as he's near enemies. So, like, yes, it doesn't exactly convey that exact ability, but it reinforces the playstyle that his character design is clearly conveying just through his appearance. This is the kind of thing that was missing from Concord's designs. Because, like, for example, I talked about Raka, the sort of rocket launcher person in the bottom left here, and the thing is that the main centerpiece of her kit is that she can fly. Now, some people did guess that, because she has a rocket launcher, maybe she can rocket jump, and there's some aerial aspects to that, but I would argue there was a very significant difference between a character that can rocket jump and a character who can straight up fly and stay hovering in the air for extended periods. So, like, if this person had wings on them, like a lot of people suggested giving her like dragonfly wings, which I think would have been kind of interesting, and it would kind of fit with like her weird helmet and everything. But like giving her an actual conveyance that she can fly is, I think, much more important because that is the centerpiece of her kit. Same thing with the wizard character that I talked about. Now, some people did pick up that she is some kind of spellcaster because she's wearing robes and it comes off like she is, a mage of some kind. But mage and like magic user is such a broad spectrum of possibilities that it doesn't really tell me anything specific about her abilities. She is actually a fire mage, and the fire is probably the thing that should be emphasized more in her character. So, like, just getting mage doesn't really tell me enough to know what I should do against her, because the difference between, like, a rock mage and an ice mage and a fire mage and, like, all of these other things is going to be very significant. Like, okay, maybe she's not going to be an up-close damage dealer because she's a wizard, sure, but, like, I need to know more than just that she's probably going to be at long range. Like, I want to know if I need to watch out, or, like, is she going to make walls? Is she going to do big AoEs? Stuff like that. Like, that's what I mean when they need to convey the playstyle. It's not about, like, an ideal perfect world character design would probably convey every single ability that every character has, but that's also fairly unrealistic to be able to convey that much information from just a glance. So, as long as you can convey what the general playstyle of the character is, I think that that's a good, like, that's good. That's just a good character design. And actually, to kind of go into an example of a character that I feel like is missing a bit of an element here, is that we have Bebop. Now, Bebop, to be fair, is very clearly a work-in-progress character, because if you actually look at his character model, and then look at his thumbnail, those are two different characters. It's worth keeping in mind that Deadlock is an early alpha. Like, this game probably isn't coming out until, like, 2026. Like, let's be real here. Like, it's surprising how fun and relatively polished the game is for being an alpha, but there are definitely a lot of aspects like this where it's not polished. I mean, hell, Lash over here literally doesn't have eyes on his character model. But yeah, so, like, this version of Bebop, I'm curious to see, like, his updated model, because they're clearly working on it. But this iteration here, like, Bebop, he does convey that he is an up-close damage dealer. He's got a gigantic spiky ball fist, so there is that. Like, you probably don't want to be next to him. So, like, very clearly, he's going to be somebody who is annoying when he's up close. However, he is the requisite MOBA hook hero, as you can probably tell by this icon over here. So, the fact that he doesn't really convey that he has that hook is kind of weird. In fact, in game, the way his hook works is that he has it, like, he turns his gun into a hand and then he shoots the hand out in order to grab you, which is, like, that means that when he's using his gun, you literally can't see the element of his design that he uses to grab people. But even then, a hand isn't really good conveyance in that regard. So I feel like he should have a proper, like, dedicated hook or anchor or like something that he can use to grab people that is clearly always visible on his body so that you can get that idea, because like that is the main thing you need to worry about, because yes, he is dangerous up close, but the reason why he's dangerous up close is because he doesn't come to you, you come to him. So that's what I mean. Like, I feel like that, like, this is an example of a Deadlock character that I feel like definitely is deserving of like another rework. So let's move on to the next one. Now, Dynamo, I think, is another fun one to maybe play our little home game with. So go ahead and, leave a comment down below and tell me what you think this character can do. Because I think he's got a lot of interesting elements going on in his design. So right off the bat, he's very, like, he's clearly not human. You can tell that much right away. And he's got this, like, big orb belly thing that, when I first looked at it, I was curious if this was, like, a bomb or something. And I was wondering if maybe he exploded. But he's also, like, he's very clearly, like, a science man. Like, he's got, like, I love the little detail of, like, the bow tie and the glasses, even though he has no face. Like, this is an example of what I was talking about of, like, conveying his personality through his character design. These are the kinds of elements that Concord characters are missing, because this makes him so much more charming than if he just didn't have them. Because, like, imagine if you got rid of the glasses, the bow tie, maybe even like the strap around him and whatnot. He would just look like a weird orb robot man, and he wouldn't really have any good personality conveyed to him. He'd be kind of like the trash robot in Concord, where like he has like a couple of things, but there's so little personality coming through this design because he's just so round and plain compared to like this guy who has these accessories to really like sell that he's this sort of like nutty professor kind of guy. But then on top of that, you'll also notice that all of his body parts are completely disconnected from him. So he's very clearly got some kind of magnetism style powers going on here. And that's kind of what plays into his kit. He's got, the ability to launch people. He's got the ability to suck people into him. He's got a little bit of, movement control. He can move himself and allies through space. So like the magnetism is, I think, the element that they're trying to focus on. Now, I do think it could be maybe highlighted a little bit better. A classic trope of magnets is like the red and blue polarity style thing. So maybe if they can work that into his design, that might come through a little bit more clearly, because it is a little subtle. But I think that it works. Like, if you pick up on the magnetism vibe, then I think that his sort of abilities naturally follow, with him being very movement control based and things like that. Moving on, I mean, Grey Talon. I guess we can play the game as again if you want to, tell me what you think of him. But I feel like this one's pretty obvious. Like, there's really no, there's really no wondering what this person can do, because he's got a gigantic bow here that can shoot out these huge arrows. Of course, he's going to be some kind of long-range sniper. He's got all kinds of abilities based around jumping up into the air, shooting you from a million miles downrange. It's pretty clear the kind of character that he is. And of course, using a bow and arrow instead of a gun may give more like hunter vibes, So maybe it's less that he's necessarily just like a, I'm going to stand downrange from a kilometer away and snipe you kind of, long range character, and more of a trapper. And that actually ties into one of his abilities, is that he can lay down traps, and then he can shoot you while you're immobilized. So like that, I think that giving him that bow and arrow really helps tie into that kind of ability. Then of course we have Haze, and oh man, I was playing with a really busted Haze last night. But Haze is interesting because I think this is another character that is probably going to be redesigned, but at the very least, for the time being, I think that her abilities sort of come through decently well. She's got these sort of twin machine guns here, right? And she's got this weird thing going on with her head where like there's like smoke coming out around it. Plus, her name is Hayes, and it's like weird and like fuzzy, like weird things going on. And the immediate response that my brain goes to personally, and again, feel free to leave a comment if you have your own ideas, but very clearly this is a stealth character. Like this is not. No, like she probably wants to fight you one on one, but she doesn't want you to know that it's a one on one. Like she wants to sneak up on you and land the first hit. And again, that's what her abilities reinforce. So like maybe you don't necessarily like maybe you can't tell that she has a sleep dagger, which is her main ability here, that basically just puts a person to sleep, so it silences and stuns them, right? So like you might not be able to get that exactly from her abilities, but like I said, the idea of her being like a stealth hero that comes in and just messes you up, like that's the kind of ability that you need to be on the lookout for, and she's got a cloak. And then she can basically focus on one particular person and then just increase damage against them. So all of her abilities clearly reinforce that sort of, cloak and dagger playstyle of just running in and annihilating one person in particular and then getting out before she gets killed in return. Like, she's probably also a glass cannon because she's clearly, very lithe. She doesn't have a lot of armor. She's wearing like a ton of leather for like mobility, that kind of thing. So like she's mobile, but she's not durable. So like, she doesn't want to fight you on even terms, is clearly the vibe that she's giving off. In Furnace, I mean, I talked about this guy in the original Concord video. Again, I feel like it's very obvious. Like, this is how you do a fire wizard. Make it so that he's literally always on fire. Give him glowing orange tattoos. Give him bright red aesthetics. And again, like he conveys other aspects too, because like he's very memorable. Like this guy just looks cool, and his personality is shining clearly because like despite the fact that like this has got a guy with fire powers, like this guy clearly is not like a hothead that is about to like go crazy with fire or anything. Like he's clearly got it under control, like he's the kind of guy that you can probably sit down and have a chat with, and that actually works out really well because if you pull up his backstory, I believe it says that he's a bartender. So like it's perfectly conveying the kind of personality that this guy has, which makes him more charming and endearing to people that might want to play as him. It's a cool design, and it perfectly conveys that like I don't even have to go into the details about his abilities because it's clearly evident that every single ability he has is related to fire. Like that's obvious, Now, Ivy here is interesting. Right off the bat, memorable design. I don't think there's another character on the cast that looks anything like Ivy. But what can she actually do is the question. And that this one is kind of a tricky one, I think. So this one might be another one to try and give your own takes and guesses in the comments, because I don't think it's necessarily super obvious exactly what she can do right away. So like if we look at her design, she's clearly some kind of weird gargoyle person, so like gargoyles are typically associated with like stone and being able to like, transform between like stone and flesh. So like that's probably a sign that she's pretty durable despite her, relatively light frame. So it could be that she's not necessarily tanky on her own, but she can become tanky. She's also clearly covered in a lot of ropes or vines here. Plus her name is literally Ivy. So some kind of, movement restriction, entanglement kind of thing. I think that comes through in the design a little bit. She's got like this gun is super weird. Like it's got dual mags coming into it, so I think they're trying to like make it look like a crossbow or something. It's kind of weird. But yeah, like I think that the two strongest elements are the fact that she's clearly some kind of and even then you might not necessarily pick up on that she's a gargoyle, but I think she's clearly some kind of like weird gargoyle creature, and the vines definitely come through. And then those are represented in her abilities. She has stone form because she is a gargoyle. So if you do pick up on the gargoyle-ness, then that is intentional. Although I do feel like maybe there could be more texture work to convey that. I mean, she does have like the gray skin, and she's got like the sort of marbling along her skin. So like maybe you can pick up on that as well. Um, and that does convey that. And then the stone form, of course, makes her like invulnerable for a little bit. And then she does have the immobilization vines that slow people down. So like I think those elements are coming through well. Now she does also have like a heal that isn't necessarily coming through very well, but at the same time, the heal is something more for her allies. That's not something that you as somebody attacking her necessarily needs to watch out for. And it's also, when she uses that ability, it's pretty obvious that she is linking up with somebody because it creates a physical connection between the two characters. So even though I don't think you can really tell necessarily right away that she's like some kind of healer, and to be fair, there's not really any specific class roles in this game. Like anybody can play as a healer or a tank or support or whatever. But when she uses Watcher's Covenant, it does create a very visual element on the battlefield that tells you like, oh, these two characters are connected. I need to watch out for that because they're clearly supporting each other. So that's an interesting thing to kind of keep in mind is again, like I said, it's not important that you convey literally every ability that a character can do, as long as you get the general vibe of what you need to be watching out for. And like, as an attacker, if she's not actively healing somebody, I don't need to be watching out for that. But when she is, it's very obvious that she is, and I think that that's good visual design, at least in the game, even though you can't necessarily tell that from the character itself. But yeah, now moving on. Again, Kelvin. This is easy mode if you're playing along still. Like come on, you can tell right away what kind of character this is without even trying. So like, you know, this character is clearly the ice hero. You know, this is the May of the group. This is the guy who shoots out some kind of cold beam that slows you down. You know, now this thing on his back is interesting, and to be fair, I don't actually know exactly what that does, like, mechanically, because I haven't fought too many Kelvins. But it is an interesting sort of character element, because it does make you ask questions as to, like, what is this weird thing? So yeah, like, again, it's really no wonder that this guy's main ability is focused around, you know, Arctic Beam. It slows down your opponent. Frost Grenade, it slows down your opponent. Like, big shockers here. Now, again, similar to Ivy, this guy does have another ability that isn't necessarily conveyed visually in his design, but it's an incredibly visual ability when it's being used, which is Ice Path, which basically allows him to create, you know, like Frozone from The Incredibles. He can create a trail of ice that he can use to sort of go up into the air, and then the trail sticks around for a bit so that allies and even enemies can walk along it. But allies get like a movement buff and a slow resistance and whatnot while they're using it. So again, it's not necessarily obvious that he can create a giant ice path, but when he is creating a giant ice path, it's pretty obvious that it's happening. And again, it's not an attack. It's not something that directly harms you. So like, it's not something that you need to be worried about defensively in terms of like staying alive. And then when he uses it and it sticks around for a while, there's no missing that it's there. It's very obviously present. So again, like that's another good example of what I'm talking about with like, you know, if an ability isn't conveyed in the character design, at least make it obvious when it's being used, and things like that. And especially that works better if the ability isn't an offensive one, you know, like the supports and the ice path and everything. Now, Lady Geist, this one I think is a much more interesting one to play the game with. So what kind of vibes are we getting from Lady Geist? So, like, very clearly we're getting, like, a posh, high society sort of character, you know, because, again, this has the classic, like, 1920s vibe. going along with it. So we've got this massively oversized like fur neck thing. Um, but then she's also got this like weird, creepy ghost arm that very clearly is going to do something nasty to you. And the main color scheme that she's going with is green, which is often associated with like life force and stamina and things like that. So like, I think that it's not a reach to figure out that this character is all about manipulating life force. And of course, unsurprisingly, if you look at her number two, her straight up ability is just straight up stealing life from people and then healing her. Now, to be fair, I do think that it's not necessarily conveyed offensively what she can do. She's got a slow sort of dagger kind of ability, and she's got a bomb. And those aren't conveyed super well in the design. If anything, her abilities sort of are like she conveys what she can do to her player well, because the way these abilities work, like her whole gimmick is that she has short cooldowns. Like this only has a 6-second cooldown by default, and you can make it shorter. And this only has a 10-second cooldown. But they cost health to use, and like that is conveyed very well through the fact that like I said, she's clearly some sort of life force manipulator here. So the fact that she has two abilities that cost health and then one ability that gives her health back by stealing it, like I think that is conveyed well as the person playing her, but as the person fighting her, I don't need to know that her abilities are costing her health necessarily. I mean, I guess it's useful to know because that means that if she's using her abilities a lot, that means that she's effectively killing herself. And so that is good information to have, but it doesn't really convey what I need to be worried about beyond the lifesteal. Like, the lifesteal conveyed pretty well, I think, but like maybe something more obvious as to the fact that she has bombs and knives, I think would be good to emphasize, so that we can get a better idea of like what to watch out for when we're fighting her. Like I said, not every character is perfect. Like this character, I think is close to being really, really good because she's got like the lifesteal and everything comes through very, very well. But I definitely feel like more of what I need to be worried about her defensively should come through. Where was I? Lash. I mean, let's be real here. I think it's pretty obvious who Lash is. I mean, do I even really need to talk about him? I mean, we could just look at his backstory here. That tells you everything you need to know. McGinnis. Now, McGinnis is a fun one. Because, again, you can immediately tell the kind of vibe that they're going with here. Like again, like this is I think easy mode when it comes to trying to guess what kind of ability she has, because like again, maybe you can't tell exactly what each ability will be, but she is clearly the engineer character. She's got all kind of tools on her belt, and she's got all kinds of packs on her back with various like gizmos and gadgets. She's covered in like soot and oil and things like that. She's wearing protective clothes for dealing with heavy machinery. So like, again, even without knowing what her exact abilities are, you can guess that she's probably going to be an area denial hero, because that's what every engineer character is, because the idea is always that you build stuff that then helps your allies and makes your enemies not want to be there. So like, again, it's no surprise that her main ability is that she has turrets. And then she can also build a wall. And again, it's not necessarily immediately obvious that she can build a wall, but again, the wall is area denial, and she gives off this area denial vibe. So it's very clear that you need to watch out for area denial moves, of which the wall heavily reinforces, as well as her ultimate even. She basically lays down a rocket barrage, and you don't want to be in the area where she lays down that rocket barrage. She even literally gives out massive air raid sirens. Like it's that kind of thing. Mo and Krill, another big, heavy, tanky kind of character. Just right off the bat, you have this massive guy over here with the weird pig face, and then you've got this weird little guy. So like he's tanky, but he's clearly got help from somebody, so he might not be necessarily as up close and personal as Abrams is, because like this guy could probably attack people from a slightly longer range, and he's clearly kind of a little gremlin. Like this guy's gonna be a bit mischievous, so he's probably gonna be fucking with you in some way that you don't want to deal with. So there's gonna be some interesting things going on here that you want to watch out for from this guy, but he's also going to be hiding behind this big, massive, tanky guy over here. So, like, I think that kind of gives an interesting sort of dynamic where you kind of got to watch out for both of these guys, because you can tell that they're going to be working together. One of them's going to be hiding behind the other one, and they're going to be doing things to just mess you up. Like these guys clearly play dirty. You can like this is not a high society looking character. He's got that classic like beanie hat style thing. And he's wearing like leather gloves and a chain and stuff. Like these guys are like gangsters kind of people. Like they are. This is another play dirty, play unfair, try to get a leg up on your opponent type character, and then just kind of brute force it once you've like done something mean to them. That kind of thing. Paradox. I'm going to try and start speed running through these because this is taking a while. But, Paradox, very clearly some kind of, like, rogue-style character. They've got some kind of, maybe not necessarily stealth, because, like, they're clearly not hiding who they are based off of the character design. But they clearly are going to do things that kind of mess with you in some way. This is another kind of character that probably, similar to Hayes, they want to set up an advantage and try to, like, get you out of position, things like that, in order to try and take advantage on that, and then try to like burst you down before you can respond. That's the kind of vibe that I'm getting from her. Pocket. Now Pocket, he kind of just comes off as, he looks like kind of a dude. He doesn't have a lot going on. Now he does have this glowing briefcase here, right? So he's clearly got something going on there with his briefcase. And so there's something going on. He's got some weird, or not weird, but he's got like a very high society sort of look to him. So he's not the kind of guy to necessarily play unfair, but he's clearly doing something that you won't expect. Like he's got secrets, He's going to be doing something strange. He's also got a very dark and muted color palette. So, like, maybe this guy's not going to be an upfront damage dealer. He's got, this guy he's kind of hard to read, but at the same time, I feel like him being hard to read is kind of his gimmick. Because he kind of comes off like he's hiding something, So it's kind of weird. Like that kind of character type is hard to judge using the metric I set out, because if his gimmick is being hard to tell what's happening, then the design means that it's going to be hard to tell what he can do, but that's also the point. So I don't know. You can be the judge of whether that makes sense. Now 7. Now look at this guy. Look at him. Look at everything this guy can do. This is a cool character design. Like, you can tell so much about this character by just looking at him. Like, go ahead, tell me what you think this guy can do. Because this is so interesting. Like, very obviously, just in terms of personality, this is clearly not a good person, He's got the creepy face. He's clearly dressed up like a prisoner, so he's probably escaped from prison. He's still wearing chains and, like, handcuffs and foot cuffs and whatnot. So, like, he like, broke out of prison yesterday, But then on top of that, he's got a very yellow color palette. He's got these sort of, like, electric Tesla coil style things going on. Like, it's very clear to me that this is an electric character. This guy's got electricity powers going on. And so this is the kind of thing where, like, oh, he's probably going to be doing arcing damage. He's probably going to be doing AoE. He's going to be doing not necessarily damage over time, but like consistent damage, like because like fire you get hit by it and then you take damage over time, but with electricity it's more that like he's going to be doing continuous rapid fire damage to you, and like I think that this is like a really really solid character design in terms of conveying like what he can do. He looks different from everybody else on the cast. Like he's got this massive like weird Tesla coil hat thing. The yellow character design, like everything is like very distinct and memorable. You can tell immediately the kind of person that he is, and I just like this is very top tier in terms of like aesthetic design. And again, I like just he clearly has lightning powers, static charge, lightning ball, power surge, storm cloud. Like it's no wonder that all of his abilities are lightning based. Like no duh, clearly. Now Shiv is interesting because he looks like Elvis, but this game takes place in like, I mean, I guess we don't know when this game takes place, but it's got a very like 1920s, 1930s vibe. So a bit of a strange one there, but this guy's an interesting one because like this guy, if when you look at him, he's clearly a punk. He's not going to be the kind of guy. He's another kind of guy who probably doesn't play fair, right? He's clearly got the greaser aesthetic going on. He cares about his appearance, but he also is willing to like throw down and beat you up if you dare to like insult his hair. Like that kind of character. And so as a result, he's clearly going to be very aggressive. He's probably not like melee, but he's clearly short range, short temper type character, and like he is going to like mess you up in some way. And plus, like, you can see he's got, like, I think it's his character model's maybe clipping a little bit, but he's got, like, daggers in his coat and things like that. The missing arm clearly also reinforces the brawler. Like, he does not care about, like, getting hurt if it means, like, beating you up kind of thing. So, like, some kind of dive hero, I think, makes sense. Like, somebody who can go in, mess you up, and then like his survival strategy is killing you before you kill him. Like that's the kind of gist that I'm getting from him. And again, that does kind of come through. Now, to be fair, his main gimmick is that he does bleed damage, and I don't know if that necessarily is conveyed strictly. I think that maybe if he had a few more knives on him, or if the knives were emphasized a little bit more, maybe that would come through better. He is dressed in white and red, which are very, like, medicinal colors in a way. So, like, maybe that kind of helps convey that, because he's got that sort of color scheme going to him. Maybe a little bit more red. Hell, maybe some blood stains. Although, this guy also looks like the kind of guy who wouldn't dare get blood on his shirt, But, like, something like that to help convey the bleed damage, I think, would enhance this design a little bit beyond where it is. Now, Vindicta. Again, I think that this character is pretty straightforward in terms of what they can do. I mean, you get the vibe from the sniper rifle and the fact that she's floating. She's clearly some kind of weird ghost person. So, like, she's clearly not going to be an up-close character. Like, again, she's very, like, skinny. She's not going to be a tank kind of character. The way that her body like flows kind of gives the vibe that she's a bit mobile in some way, and she's clearly going to be the kind of person that it stays at a long range and then kind of singles you out. Also, the fact that her name is Vindicta kind of gives away some of the game a little bit here. Like, I think it's pretty clear that she's going to be some kind of long range, like, I'm going to mess you up kind of character, sort of thing. Like, again, pretty straightforward sniper design, in my opinion. Now, Viscus is kind of funny. His backstory is that, like, he's a sea anemone that, like, telekinetically, like, formed his body. It's weird. But I think that this character does a pretty decent job of conveying what he can do, because, like, I mean, if you just look at him, he is a goopy boy. Like, he's very clearly goopy, and all of his abilities are going to be based around gooping up the battlefield and gooping up enemies and gooping up allies. Like, again, pretty straightforward. It's not complicated. He's literally made of goop. His abilities are goop. Like, I think it's pretty straightforward. He has, like, some he has the ability to punch people from a distance, and that like materializes from the goop that he forms, and it can like push people around. And I think that that makes sense because like because he's also got the splatter which slows people down. So like this is a movement control thing. Like if you're thinking about what does goop mean mechanically, goop means like he's going to lay down goop and control where people are, right? So like the fact that he has a goopy ability that slows people down makes sense. The fist reinforces that like he if you're not where he wants you to be, he will put you there, you know, and then he can punch you into the goop, you know. So again, this is very clearly like a movement control style hero where you want to be careful about where you're standing and you want to watch out for his shenanigans that he's going to pull, you know, that kind of thing. Morden, very clearly no nonsense, big guy. He's probably going to be tanky. You know, he's not quite as barrel chested as Abrams is, but he's clearly not a small individual. And like he's wearing the cop outfit. He's clearly got like jail ring keys. He's got this kind of like very official posh like design to him. So like you get a lot of his personality just from the design, but like the fact that he's named Warden and he's got this cop outfit, I mean, is he going to be like throwing people in jail? You know, like is he gonna he's gonna like literally like he's gonna like arrest you mid fight? Like that's the kind of like idea that I'm getting from him is that he's gonna like chase you down and try to like pin you in place like right away. And then that is in fact like one of his abilities is that he can bind people, like he can straight up like imprison you, and then he has like sort of a AoE sort of debuff thing to try and like slow you down to make you easier to imprison. So again, like another sort of area denial kind of hero that I think is coming along pretty strongly through the cop aesthetic very well. Wraith. Now this person's weird because they have like prosthetic arms and normal arms. So like they use their prosthetic arms for like all of their abilities and holding their gun, and then they just keep their normal hands in their pockets. I mean, I think that the personality is clearly coming through very well. Like this person's clearly like a mob boss. Like they literally can't be bothered to even fight themselves. So like they just have arms that they command to do the job for them. Again, like I think the personality is coming through well. I think that the sort of aesthetic of the absurdly oversized shoulder pads is sort of giving the clearly like she's the boss of an organization sort of vibe. Like this was another thing that like one of the other characters had in Concord where they had like these massively oversized shoulder pads, but it didn't really feel like it made sense with the character. Like, what does that mean for them? Whereas it makes clear sense to me with the way the rest of the outfit with like the hat and the suit style and everything. Like this is clearly like the boss of some kind of like underground organization who just does not take anyone's shit. Like this is, I think this is just another cool design. But again, mechanically speaking, she's clearly not going to be another tank character. She's not going to be super durable, but she's clearly got some kind of interesting things going on. I mean, the fact that she has extra hands to begin with probably means that she's like a fast attacker, that she can like mess people up in the blink of an eye, that she can do things like that. And I think that that is reinforced. Like she is a DPS character. She does damage. She singles out targets like that. And again, she's another one that has one of these abilities that isn't necessarily immediately obvious with the card trick. But again, while this ability is active, in game, the cards are literally summoned and float around her body. So sure, right now it's not very obvious that she has those cards that she can throw at you to deal damage. But in game, she literally accumulates them around her, so you can visually see, oh, she's got these built up. I need to watch out for those because she could throw them at me at a moment's notice. So it's another classic example of an ability that isn't conveyed in the character design, but I think does come through well in in game when you're actually fighting against her. And then you have Yamato, and I feel like I shouldn't talk about Yamato because this is another character who has who was going to go through a significant redesign very soon. Um, so I mean, if you wanna go through and analyze her for free, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that she's going to be a sort of up close DPS damage dealer because she's clearly the sword hero. Um, but the reason why Yamato looks so weird is because so previously this game actually had a cyberpunk aesthetic. They shifted it to the sort of 1920s styling relatively recently, but some of the characters are still left over. And so in the original version of this game, or at least in the older one, she literally is an alien. So like that's why she has such a weird long head and solid black eyes and things like that. So like she's not an alien anymore, so they're probably going to completely rework her design. And plus she's still like she has she's got like that mix of like technological and classical looking armor sort of going on. So like it's kind of a weird aesthetic for this game, but again, she's very clearly going to be going through a major character design rework. So it's kind of unfair to really talk about her in this context, in my opinion. But yeah, so like that's the entire roster of Deadlock so far. And like I said, overall, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this character roster just right off the bat is immediately a million times more appealing than something like Concord. Like it's barely even worth comparing the two for like how different they look. Like the colors are much more saturated and varied. There's a lot more interesting like character traits that you can pull from. You know, like one of the things that I remember talking about a lot is like, you know, with this Space Marine looking character here, like why is she just wearing like plain green armor with almost no details on it? Right? Like put some stickers on her shoulder pads. Like give her a pet cat and then like put a cat sticker on her shoulder. That would like give us something about her personality. You know what I mean? Like obviously that's a very basic example, but like, that's what I mean when I'm saying like we should be able to tell more about who these characters are by looking at them because that's how you endear people to them. And so like when you have characters like Dynamo who have these adorable little glasses and bow ties and whatnot, you know, like that helps endear us to them. It gives us more info about their personality and it just makes them more charming. And so I think that they're doing a really, really good job with that already. And again, keep in mind, this is an alpha. They're not even done yet. They'll probably add more characters. They'll refine some of the designs because, yeah, they're not all perfect. Like I said, the fact that Bebop doesn't have his hook plainly visible is a bit of an oversight, in my opinion. And I feel like that's something that I hope they redress in a redesign. And a few other characters are like that as well. But like there's clearly room to grow here, but it's already off to a great start despite how early it is. So yeah, like it's no question to me that like Deadlock has a great character roster. But yeah, I think I'll go ahead and just leave it at there for now. So, I mean, for those of you that were playing along at home, how well did you do at identifying these characters? Because I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more comments that'll be a lot less confused when it comes to trying to guess what kinds of abilities that these characters have. But like I said, there's a couple that could be improved upon still, but I think that overall, people are going to be able to guess these characters a lot more accurately. But for now, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw, remember to leave me a like and give me a subscribe. If you want to help the channel out, you can always donate to my Ko-Fi. And I hope to see you all in the next one when I go much more in depth as to why I like Deadlock and the kinds of improvements that I think that it makes over the MOBA genre. So stay tuned if you want to see me make that video, and I'll probably add a link to it in the description when that video comes out. But for now, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.